Hey, how you doing, kiddos? Hope you had a great Memorial Day. Hope you're all safe and healthy. Today we are going to be learning about energy flow. It's been a little while. We took some time off to give people time to prepare for AP exams. And I hope that went really, really well for everybody and didn't run into any of the technical issues that I've been hearing about as far as submitting things. But that's all over, and we've got new work coming along for you. So today we're going to be talking about energy flow. So that should be good. Please, while we're going through the PowerPoint, take some notes. There are going to be questions and little mini activities. Do those as you go along. You're going to submit that stuff on Google Classroom later. Okay? So let's get started. Our big goal here is how does the transfer of energy and mode of nutrition that we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago at this point, I guess, provide structure to ecologic communities. Wow, that's a lot. And so the first thing you should think about as a do now is, can we put these things into groups? And that idea is really, really important. We've talked about grouping things multiple times throughout the year, and the ability to do that is really, really important. So we've got 5 organisms that need to get grouped. Savanna grass, grasshopper, gazelle, wildebeest, that's the correct spelling, and cheetah. Okay, if you don't know what a wildebeest is, here's that wildebeest. Here's a gazelle if you wasn't sure. That's Thompson's gazelle, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so wildebeest are kind of like these little yak things. So we want to put those things in 3 groups. Ultimately, it falls out this way, with savanna grass in a group all by itself, the cheetah in a group all by itself, and then the gazelle, the wildebeest, and the grasshopper together. Not only are these 3 groups, I've organized them very, very purposefully. We have our savanna grass here all by itself. Why is it in a group by itself? Because it is a producer. Grass is photosynthetic. They're plants. They have chloroplasts, going back to Unit 2. And therefore, they produce their own food, and they can process that food to energy all by themselves. The gazelle, the wildebeest, and the grasshopper are herbivores. These are things that feed off of producers like savanna grass. And so I've made sure that that group is next to the savanna grass, because this group of herbivores or consumers takes energy from here. And then lastly, the cheetah. Cheetah is a carnivore. And so cheetah takes its energy from these things, notably the gazelle and the wildebeest. It's doubtful that cheetahs actually go hunting for grasshoppers. That might be kind of hard for them, but it'd probably be pretty funny. So cheetah, carnivore, herbivore, producer. Together, these are all consumers because they take their energy from consuming other organisms. And these are our producers. They're autotrophs. These are heterotrophs. Hetero meaning something other than itself, or something dissimilar to the thing. So cheetahs get their energy from organisms other than cheetahs. They don't make their energy themselves. Okay. So hope that clarifies, but we've got that out of the way. Real quick review for modes of nutrition. This is important because our mode of nutrition is used for classifying and organizing organisms in ecosystems. This is our basic structure, and it's really, really important for that reason. So we need to make sure that we get this. And the problem is there are multiple terms that get used, and we need to be able to swap them out at will and sort of automatically. And so taking a look, we've got producers and consumers and decomposers. Those are our three big groups. Okay. Within those, we have the autotrophs. Okay. They are producers. Now, it doesn't make sense to have a big group with one group underneath. Like, why do that? And the secret is autotrophs are not the only types of producers. These autotrophs further subdivide into chemoautotrophs and photoautotrophs, depending on where they make their food from. Not everything uses the sun as energy. There are deep water or deep ocean organisms that use chemicals to process this stuff. They live near hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean. And so it's a little more specific than what we're getting in now. So I wouldn't worry too much about knowing those things. It's great trivia, but they're not generally going to ask about it. Just understand that autotrophs, as we know them, plants that do photosynthesis, not the only type of producer. And so we've got our consumers. These are things that get their energy from other organisms. The heterotrophs take energy from other things, and carnivores are one type of heterotroph. Herbivores are another type. They take energy directly from plants. And then the omnivores that eat both plants and other animals. Humans would be omnivores, and a lot of people are going to argue that. And there's good reasons for humans to be herbivores only. There are not great reasons to be carnivores only, but omnivores do make sense there to include some meat in our diet. And that's a different discussion for a different lesson. And it gets into all kinds of philosophy and ethics as well as basic good for the environment, really. We'll talk about that later down the road when we talk about population. So all of these organisms organize into different levels of energy, and we call them trophic levels. That root troph should remind you of energy. And anytime you see it, just like when you see bio, you think of living things. When you see troph, you should think about energy. And it's part of autotroph and heterotroph. So we should be familiar with that vocab. It's going to make things easier. We represent our trophic levels by numbers. We start at level 1, and those are our plants. As we go up, we add 1. So we have a trophic level 2 and a trophic level 3 and a trophic level 4. And it works basically like this, the way I have it outlined up here. Plants and algae make their own food. They're primary producers. This is level 1. That primary means they are the first. Okay. Level 2, we have herbivores. They eat plants, and they're called primary consumers. So they are the first consumers. Level 3, we have carnivores, which eat herbivores. These are secondary consumers. They're the second organism to touch the energy that came from level 1. Carnivores that eat other carnivores are called tertiary consumers. And then we typically get apex predators, which have no other predators above them. Not all ecosystems are going to have apex predators. Not all ecosystems will have 5 levels of energy within them. Some are simpler and have fewer. Some don't have apex predators. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more specifically later in the week. So this all leads us to the concept of an energy pyramid. Energy flow in an ecosystem is super important to providing structure for that ecosystem. And if you think to any of those like National Geographic specials that you've seen with lions and, you know, hunting on the savannah and all the stuff that's there, there's not hundreds of lions. You see 1 or 2, right? But you're going to see a herd of hundreds of gazelles or antelopes. And the whole background is filled with grass and trees. This is not chance. All these organisms occur because of the energy that's available to them. Okay. And it's structured kind of like a pyramid. So why a pyramid? What makes a pyramid a good representation of energy inside of an ecosystem? Take a minute. See if you can jot down an answer in your notes. Okay, so what do we think? Why is this pyramid going to work? Pyramids show energy that moves from one trophic level to the next trophic level. If you recall in that opening picture, I had lions up top, giraffes in the middle, and trees and grass at the bottom. Pyramids start with a really wide base, and they go up to a teeny tiny point. What does this say about the energy? What does this mean? As we go up in trophic level, what happens to that energy? Well, to be more specific, only 10% of the energy from one level makes it up into the next higher level. And so as we go up our pyramid, climb towards the top, we see that there is less available energy in each level. And so pyramid makes sense. That lower level has a ton of energy. It's a really broad, large amount. And as we go up, each level gets smaller and smaller, till we're left with a teeny tiny little point. To be more specific, if we look at this mathematically, if we start with 100 units of energy at our lower trophic level 1, 10% of that, or 1/10, moves up. And so our second trophic level, the herbivores, would contain 10 units of energy. And the primary consumers, carnivores, would have 1 unit of energy. Secondary consumers, also carnivores, 1/10 of a unit of energy. And our apex predators, those tertiary consumers, would have 1/100th. Okay. Now, this 10% rule is kind of very, very flexible. Some energy transfers are a little more efficient. Some are less efficient. And so we need to look at each specific ecosystem and each interaction individually and make measurements to get actual values. But a good quick estimate and the commonly accepted value in most ecological studies is that 10% transfer. It's a good average. Okay, so keep that in mind. That is a number we want to know, that 10% energy transfer. Okay. So what consequences does reduced energy have? If we say that as we go up in levels from that broad base, smaller and smaller and smaller until we get to the top of the pyramid, what is it that's going to have, what effect will that have? If there's less available energy, what does that mean about the size of the population? And think back to that picture we opened up with and that idea that we see in a lot of those documentaries. We don't see lots of lions, but we do see a lot of plants. Population will be controlled by this available energy. And as we go up to the top of the pyramid and we have less and less available energy at each trophic level, we're going to see smaller populations. We can't have hundreds of lions if we've only got a few hundred gazelles. It's not enough energy for those lions to survive. Then we run into competition, and then we run into that whole advantage, disadvantage that we saw last unit in evolution. And there are going to be individuals that will be more successful at capturing their food, obtaining that energy, and they're going to use that energy to reproduce, passing on genes that allow their children to be more successful at capturing food. And so we start to see this connection between some of the things we talked about previously and things that we are talking about now. Big connections are important. So those pyramids do also show that the structures that we have in ecosystems, we need a large number of producers to support the smaller groups of consumers. And as we go up from primary to secondary to tertiary consumers to apex predators, we see the numbers in the populations going down and down and down because they need more energy to survive. And therefore there is less energy passed up to them. They don't have the population size. They can't. The whole ecosystem would just collapse. And that's the other neat thing about the pyramid, is it shows this idea that we have that wide, strong base. If there is a problem with that, if there is damage to that, if we lose population of those autotrophs and those producers, then all the stuff above that is supported by that large energy pool is going to collapse. And that's really bad. Okay. Higher an organism's trophic level, the smaller its population will be. Carnivores will always be less than herbivores, will always be less than autotrophs. This is fact. It has to be this way. Otherwise, there will not be enough energy. Okay. Anytime that we see that there's more carnivores than herbivores, the ecosystem is in for some serious trouble. Things are going to be unstable. All right. So, time to practice. Let's see how this goes. Couple of sample questions for you here. So there are 30 grams of hay. This is an old Regents question, by the way, which is hay is a dried grass. We usually feed it to horses and things. So we take that hay and we boil it in 500 milliliters of water. We place that boiled water in a culture dish and we allow it to stand. Next day, a small sample of pond water was added to the mixture of boiled hay and water. Okay, we do this to extract some of the nutrients from the hay. And then when we add the pond water, there's going to be stuff in that pond water, particularly bacteria and algae and protozoa, little single-celled organisms. Okay, the dish it gets covered, contents observed regularly. We find that bacteria feed on nutrients from the boiled hay. And as the population of the bacteria increases very quickly, because we know these things grow exponentially, a clear mixture becomes cloudy. So this boiled water started off clear. We added a drop of pond water. After a couple of days, that water becomes cloudy. We give it a week and we look under a microscope and we start to see different types of protozoa, single-celled organisms eating the bacteria. And so the question we have based on this paragraph is the protozoa that fed on bacteria can best be described as, are these going to be producers, herbivores, parasites, or consumers? What are the protozoa? Okay. We want to support our answer with evidence from the paragraph. Okay, if you're going to need more time and want to look at this question, the PowerPoint presentation will be attached as well as this video to our Google Classroom, so you can go through it slowly at your own convenience. Also, you have that ability if you need to get notes. And I probably should have said that at the beginning of the video so you didn't have to stop and pause and stop and pause and stop and pause. Sorry. So same paragraph. The Regents does this a lot. They'll give us a little paragraph for context and information, and they will ask multiple questions. So we want to label each of the energy pyramid below with an organism that's mentioned in the paragraph that belongs at that level. So we should know from the previous question where that protozoa belongs. The other organisms are the hay and the bacteria. And so where do those things fit? Which one is going to be our producer? Which thing was photosynthetic? What is it that feeds off of that? And then what feeds off of that herbivore in this case? Okay. And so same thing, you want to check out the PowerPoint if you need a little bit more time. And then you can just put this in. If you just want to, on your I assume you're typing Google Doc, if you don't want to deal with drawing the pyramid out, you can just label them as level 1, level 2, level 3, and that'll be acceptable. So what about now if we attach a little math to this? Regents has been trying to incorporate more math into the science exams, and they've been doing that pretty successfully over the last 5 years. And this is a typical question. If we know the lowest trophic level has 2,000 units of energy, we want to know the available energy at the highest trophic level. Please show your work. Okay. And that's the last question. This has been all about energy and how energy can shape the structure of ecosystems, specifically the fact that available energy controls the size of populations. Large populations of plants, those autotrophs that make their own energy, happen at the bottom, and we get smaller and smaller populations as we go up. So there are always going to be less carnivores than herbivores, and less herbivores than the plants that they feed on. Okay? Hope you have a great day. Be good, stay healthy, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.